Hey, it's Ratchet in the Hulk Room. I thought while I'm doing a little bit of cleanup here, I would talk to you about some of the comic book summer movies that had come out this summer so far. I know it hasn't really hit summer, but the summer movie season has begun. So I think we can kind of go through some of the heavy hitters that we have. Which, of course, the main three, Captain America, Winter Soldier, X-Men Days of Future Past, and then Amazing Spider-Man Part 2. So, where am I kind of placing them? And I gotta tell you, I definitely have an opinion that two of them are top-notch and making, great strides in comic book movies, and then the other one was kind of like a throwaway movie that I don't know. I don't want to say it shouldn't have it shouldn't have come out, but I definitely am unsure of where they're going with it. So let's begin with the one that I was not as impressed with. That one, of course, I'm sure you guys can guess, is Amazing Spider-Man 2. The good was Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. They were phenomenal. I think that they showed more chemistry than anybody. Than Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst ever did in Sam Raimi's original. And as much as I love Sam Raimi, he really didn't cast two people who felt anything for each other. You could just tell. Tobey Maguire was not into Kirsten Dunst, and I don't think Kirsten Dunst, thought Tobey Maguire was anything special either. So it really showed on screen that they were kind of just going through the motions. Whereas Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone have such amazing chemistry that they carried this movie through the cheesy parts. And there was a lot. A lot of people like to equate this movie to, to Batman and Robin, which I think that people just do, out of nowhere, kind of out of no creativity, and they immediately just say, man, this movie was as bad as Batman and Robin. And I think you gotta stop doing that, because not every bad comic book movie is as bad as Batman and Robin. I think Batman and Robin is terrible, and I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 doesn't go to that level. I think it definitely goes to about the Batman Forever level. And if you remember that movie, Jim Carrey actually was phenomenal as the Riddler in that movie. So there were some redeeming qualities to Batman Forever, whereas Amazing Spider-Man 2 had some redeeming qualities, but got lost in a lot of the camp as well. That whole beginning scene, by the way, when I do my reviews, I talk about the movie. If you don't want to know about the movie, if you don't want to have any spoilers, you can stop watching now. So let's go just in that beginning scene where Paul Giamatti is driving the truck and all those radioactive things start bouncing all over the place, and Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, of course, is grabbing them. Where are you going? I don't think so. Hey, I don't think so. Oh, wait. Where do you go? Get back here. That was so cheesy that it really distracted me from the movie. I was thinking, what demographic they going through for with this one? It seemed like they were going for the really young market, which is fine. You could definitely go for that market. The unfortunate thing is, I think that the records are being broken when the adults who go to see these movies fuel the fire and they keep on talking about them. So, they might have been going after the younger demographic with a lot of that stuff. Visually, it looked amazing. It really did have a lot of scenes that were just your jaw-dropping gorgeous. It was. That's why I think it was even worse when I suddenly, am watching this movie and thinking, what were they thinking with this thing? It makes no sense. The whole Electro storyline. I mean, there was parts of it was fine, and then there was other parts that, to me, they really wasted. And I mean, he had to hate Spider-Man, so he just hated Spider-Man, and to me that made no sense. That whole, why did he hate Spider-Man? I don't know, because he needed him, and then Spider-Man. Again, I kind of got lost with the ridiculousness of everything that was going on. So That being said, which was the better out of the two top-notch movies, Winter Soldier and Days of Future Past? And I'll say it right up front, I was never a big X-Men fan. I was never into X-Factor or X-Men Uncanny. I was never into any of those. New Mutants and things like that. I just didn't read them because I didn't find them interesting. When people tell me about stories, I go, hey, that sounds kind of cool. And then I try to read it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not into it. But I've been loving the movies from, number 1 and number 2. And number 2 is still one of the best comic book movies ever made. And then, you know what? I'll get into that in a second as far as the history of it. Let's just say I loved the X-Men movies. Now, Captain America: Winter Soldier. The good is that they made Cap a badass, and they also made one of the hard things about writing a Captain America story, never mind an actual movie, is that Captain America is sort of a overgrown, Boy Scout. He doesn't do wrong. He has a moral compass that exceeds most, and the phenomenal thing about that is, of course, that he is what everybody would consider a true hero. He doesn't do those questionable things, and I even loved it in the movie when they say, "Aren't you Captain America?" And he said, "Well, America as an ideal, not as, the country." And that was great. That was just great. They really got him right, and Chris Evans plays him really well. I can't even say that there was very much, negative in the movie. I can't, honestly, I'm drawing a blank as where I think that they faltered at all. I thought Robert Redford was phenomenal, and I thought Samuel L. Jackson kicked ass in this movie. It was just, it's a fun ride from beginning to end. And yeah, I never read Winter Soldier, so I did not know that Bucky was coming out. And again, I hope you're not watching this thinking that there's no spoilers. I already said I was going to before, so I don't feel bad saying this if you haven't seen the movie. But yeah, when Bucky came out as the Winter Soldier, I was completely baffled. I was just like, what? That's a great twist right there. So, what did X-Men Days of Future Past do really well? I mean, again, everything. Singer was able to bring in not just his original 2 movies, but he also brought in, the X-Men First Class. He brought in the dreadful X-Men Last Stand. He brought in scenes about the Wolverine origins and Wolverine. I mean, everything melded together in an amazing way, and I think Bryan Singer did it. I mean, the movies about time travel are really hard to begin with. It's hard to keep everything in check, and Bryan Singer made a narrative that was so easy to follow, but at the same time very complex. It's a feat. It really is. So good on him. He did an amazing job. Now, which one, in my opinion, was better? And I got to tell you, both of them are so fantastic. If you haven't seen them, you should go out and watch them. But I'm actually going to give the edge to X-Men, and I'll tell you why. A while back, Howard Stern had Brett Ratner on, and Brett Ratner was talking about movie making in general, and he said, people, you're a very controversial figure, and he was just like, yeah, I don't know why, people don't seem to like me, and all that other stuff. And he said, well, yeah, I mean, you directed the X-Men, and he goes, yeah, you know what, F those people, X-Men Last Stand made more money than all the other ones. And this is where it really killed me, because he didn't get it. He never got the idea that X-Men Last Stand made a lot of money because of the strong performances of X-Men 1 and 2 and how good they were, and how, how everybody was just like, these movies are doing really well. And then all of a sudden X-Men Last Stand came out, and yeah, it made a ton of money in the beginning, and then it lost steam. And so it kept on chugging along. It made, it definitely made a good amount of money, but later sequels, they suffered because of it. So I think Wolverine Origins and Wolverine Wolverine Origins actually went off the rails a bit too. That was a pretty terrible movie. But I think it would have made more money if it came out after X-Men 2. X-Men 3, people watched, and especially purists who, watched the movie and said, this guy doesn't get it. That movie was terrible. And then they didn't bother going to see it in the theaters for Wolverine Origins. And then, of course, Wolverine came out, and I thought, that came out, First Class came out first, which was awesome. First Class might be the best out of them all. I don't know. Days of Future Past is hard to beat, though. But First Class was phenomenal. And then Wolverine came out, and I thought Wolverine was pretty great. But that's just me. But each of these movies, like especially First Class, really had to dig a hole out of where X-Men 3 put them in. And so Days of Future Past did the most phenomenal thing. They took Part 3 out of continuity, which was the best thing he could ever do. It was like a big slap in the face to Brett Ratner, which the guy kind of deserves because he's egotistical. And, they took X-Men Part 3 right out of there. They brought Jean Grey back and Cyclops back. So it's like number 3 never even happened, which, thank goodness, because Part 3 really did nothing to help the franchise. It's like certain people have a passion and understand the story and really know where to go with a comic book movie, and other people have no clue what they're doing. Brett Ratner is one of those guys who is just, much like a Michael Bay, who says, let's throw a bunch of, explosions and cool things in there and, I'm Juggernaut, bitch, type of stuff, and people will just love it and eat it up. Not so. You might make some money at that moment, but it's how the movies are remembered afterwards that kind of really make the difference. Because if it's a nothing movie, it's a throwaway movie, you're not going to be talked about later on. And I think legacies are a lot more important than money. That's just, my opinion anyways. But, so there you have it. Which was the best movie so far? And I think Captain America 2 and X-Men Days of Future Past are pretty much on the same level as how great they are. But I'm going to give that edge to X-Men Days of Future Past. So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely go out and see it. If you haven't seen Winter Soldier, what are you waiting for? Go out and see that movie. It is phenomenal. Alright guys, I'm out. Gotta go put these comics away.